Please take part A for us.
Sorry.
A store owner finds that customers are more willing to pay for an umbrella on a rainy day.
I thought that it was a movement along the curve.
Okay, can you explain that?
Because I thought like it's a trend since it's only like one day with the weather.
Ooh, what did we say was one of the shifters of demand? Trends, right? Tastes and preferences include trends. Okay, don't worry about it. This is going to take some practice. Andy, part B, please.
Wait, you said shift, right?
It's a shift. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not a movement along. It is a shift. Because people will pay more for umbrellas and demand more quantities of them at any price given the fact that it's raining. They prefer not to get wet, right? That's their preference. Okay, Andy, part B.
Is it a shift?
Yes! Anybody need that one explained? Okay, can you explain that for us, Andy?
Is it because like the volume?
What do you guys think?
Isn't it because due to a price change, like the total demand increases?
It could be. It's an expectation about a future price,
okay.
right? It's an expectation about a future price. Lily, part C.
I said it was a shift.
Yes, it's a shift. Because at all quantities, people are going to be willing to pay a higher price. Because if they don't get their special someone, some long stem roses, maybe there's going to be trouble, right? So there's that. Okay, Kendall, part D.
I said movement.
You are right. That is a movement along. Very good. Okay, Yuri, number 2, part A.
I said a shift.
Well, why'd you say that?
Oh wait, I messed it up. I meant to put
There. Why? Why'd you change your mind?
because the quantity of people like putting their houses up
Yeah.
is caused.
It's a movement along. You're good. It's because that sort of like that housing boom is what's causing a price change, right? And that's a movement along. Isabella, part B.
I said shift.
It is a shift. Why?
Because they said the prices were usually low, so they're like didn't really indicate a price change, but it says they still open temporary stands, most likely because of an increase of
You're right. You're there. No.
increase in quantity demanded. Wait.
Increase in the number of sellers.
Oh, okay.
Increase in the number of sellers. Okay. All right. Mary, part C.
Movement?
No.
Shift.
Who knows? Yes, but why? Okay, you know. Okay, that's well and good to say that it's a shift, given that you have a 50-50 shot at it. But we got to say why. Why? Gwenny?
Because it's a demand sellers, when it's the school season, so it's anyone.
Right. These are people who are sellers of their labor. Are there more or less of them? Less. When the school year starts, right? And this is why Kings Island is only open on the weekends, because during the school year, they can't get all their workers to come during the day. Majority of them are students, either in college or in high school. So they have to close during the week because the people who are offering their labor for sale have exited the labor market. Okay, so in the labor market, workers are the sellers or the suppliers of labor. Okay? Christina, part D.
I said it was a movement along.
Yes, why?
It says temporarily because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just moving along, not a whole
Yeah.
increase of all the points.
Okay. And then Bentley, part E.
I said movement along.
But now you seem to be questioning
I
that.
think it might be a shift.
Yes, your intuition is correct. Why?
Is it because I don't know how to like. I mean, it's a movement, or I mean, it's a shift because like now that there is new technology, it's always going to be better. But I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to explore today, and this speaks directly to our review this morning or this afternoon of the shifters of supply. Essentially, anything that makes the cost of doing business cheaper for firms is going to increase supply. Okay? Yuri.
Sorry, can you repeat like 2C again?
Sure. 2C was a shift because there are less sellers. Yeah. Fewer sellers in the market, fewer suppliers in the market, however you want to put it. Yeah. Okay. All right. These are the 5 factors that can shift supply. And if you want, you can do a mnemonic I rent. Input prices, by the way, this is probably the most important. Input prices. So how expensive labor, raw materials, interest that they're paying on their loans, government policies like that would include taxes and or regulation. Those can increase or decrease the cost of doing business. The prices of related goods or services, we'll get to that one. That one's a little bit more complicated for supply than it is for demand. Producer expectations about the future. We'll do that one in a little bit more detail as well. The number of producers in the market, as well as technology. And generally speaking, technology makes the cost of doing business cheaper, right? Because you can't put the genie back in the bottle, okay? And you can frequently replace expensive laborers with technology, okay? Which changes the labor market, okay? All right. So iRent is the mnemonic device that can help you remember these factors, okay? So let's examine with a little bit more detail these 5 factors. Okay, a change in the price of an input. And that's like what we talked about before, the factors of production. Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. So the raw materials, the workers, the capital equipment, the machinery, the tools, the building in which the business is housed, as well as entrepreneurship, which is generally speaking measured by the interest rate in economics, okay? Like the interest rate essentially is like the price of borrowing money or lending your money out. Okay. All right. So for example, sugar and cream are inputs for ice cream. If the price of sugar or cream rises, then the supply curve would decrease for ice cream. Okay? Mary, you look like you have that look on your face like I'm thinking about this deeply, or maybe I have a question. Either of those?
No, I'm like, yeah, I'm a process.
You're focusing. I like it. Okay.
Locked in.
All right, so oil. It's an input for airline fuel. By the way, oil is a very important input to production. It makes plastic. It makes gasoline for our cars. It makes rocket fuel. It makes airline fuel. So if the price of oil goes up or down, it can impact a lot of firms and markets' supply curves, just as an FYI. That's why people freak out about the price of oil all the time. Okay. All right, a change in the price of a related good or service can shift the supply curve differently depending on whether or not the goods are substitutes or complements in production, okay? So essentially this is similar. Goods are substitutes in production if an increase in the price of one causes supplier to supply less of the other, okay? For example, when, I gotta think of something that is, goods are substitutes in production. Let me see if they give an example that I can use. Did they give one in the book? Oh, here we go. If the price of heating oil rises, refiners supply less gasoline, shifting the supply curve for gasoline to the left, okay? So that's one thing. So for example, propane and natural gas, compressed liquefied natural gas, those are two things. Like if the price of one increases, it will shift the supply curve for the other to the right or to the left, okay? Let's talk about complementary goods in production. So goods are complements in production if an increase in the price of one causes suppliers to supply more of the other, okay? So I mentioned natural gas before, compressed liquefied natural gas as well as propane. Those are byproducts of crude oil drilling, okay? The price of natural gas has been declining in the United States since fracking was introduced in the late 1990s, okay? Suppliers supply more of both products. So the quantity supplied, well, I should say, for what's happening for real. As the price of natural gas has decreased because of that price, right? That is a quantity supply change for our natural gas, okay? But they may also supply less gas, like gasoline, as a result. Yeah, or oil, excuse me.
In that example, it's like saying the price of natural gas goes up. Would it be the price of selling it or buying it? Would it be of like supply?
No, just the retail price.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what consumers of that are going to be paying for
Okay,
it.
got it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, expectations. And expectations, why is my computer all of a sudden freaking out? Let's try this. Here we go. Okay. These are expectations about the future. So you have to think, what would a seller do right now given some expectation about the future? And just like in demand, the book deals mostly with the expectation of the future price. But the other thing that can impact firm behavior or the supply curve is an expectation about future government regulation, future government taxes, okay? Or it could be about an expectation about a future availability of an input to production, okay? So make sure when you're reading these, and you guys should be writing that down in your notes, because as I said, in the book, it deals mostly with the future price, okay? But let me give you an example of where this can get a little cloudy, a little murky. Let's say Congress has decided that they are going to take a look at the federal minimum wage, okay? And the expectation is that there's going to be a future law that increases the price of labor by raising the minimum wage. Well, that isn't just going to impact the price of labor for sort of unskilled labor, which is what most people get paid minimum wage for that, but it's also going to have an impact on wages for all other areas as well. It pushes the price of labor up across the labor market, okay? So if there's going to be if they expect minimum wage is going to increase in the future, okay, that's an input, not the price of the good, right? That's an input. They may increase supply right now to take advantage of that cheaper labor right now, and then they can get some of their stuff out of the way. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? But let's say, for example, we're talking about there's been stuff in the news and people are saying, oh, people are going to pay more we think people are going to pay more for their laptops and desktop computers because people are going to want to buy the latest upgrades and powerful computers so that they can use open AI source code to create their own AI platforms, right? And you need really, really powerful computers in order to do that. So that may cause them to decrease the amount across the board at all prices and quantities right now because they want to take advantage of those higher prices that they think are coming down the road. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, great, perfect. Okay, So expecting gas prices to peak in the summer, producers may lower the supply of gas in the spring. So this is something that happens every spring. The price of gasoline increases, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that once we get to a certain date, they have to change the mix of gasoline to make less something called ozone. It's like this thing that causes smog, and when we have a lot of humidity, a lot of the particulates from the emissions get into the air and cause smog. So they change the mixture of the gasoline in the summertime in hot areas of the country to try to reduce the type of respiratory problems that people have from those particulates. And that everybody knows that gas is going to be more expensive over the summer. Also, they know people are going to be going on car trips to the beach and to visit whomever and summer vacation, all that, okay? Okay. All right, a price, like a price of, if they think the price is going to decrease in the future of their good or service, they may increase the amount they supply today, okay? So, for whatever reason. All right, I'm going to just go. Okay, the number of producers can shift the supply curve. If, for example, a lot of orange producers go out of business, so a lot of orange groves in Florida have to go out of business because their land is more valuable to sell to real estate developers, that is going to shift the supply curve for oranges to the left. Okay? If new orange producers enter the market, the supply curve for oranges will shift to the right. Okay? So when you add a lot of sellers, not just one, right, in a competitive market, but a lot, that will shift the supply curve. Okay. And then the last one we're going to talk about is technology. Generally speaking, technology advances shift supply to the right. It's an increase in supply, okay? But, for example, in the late 60s and early 70s, DDT, which was a pesticide used in the United States at that time, got banned because of its health impact on mostly birds and fish. That lowered the supply for certain types of agricultural products. Okay? Anybody have any questions about the shifters of supply? All right. This is just looking at how we take individual supply curves for firms, or if it's a laborer, their labor, and we add them horizontally. So the vertical axis, the price stays the same, but we add up the quantities for the market supply curve. That's all. Okay. Okay, take a break. I want everybody to stand up and walk around the room one time.
Wait a second.
And then take a seat. I want you guys to like just kind of. I mean, I wouldn't object as long as you don't make too much noise.
Get ride the bike around next time.
Okay, that's
I don't know. When was the last time you rode that bike?
In August.
This August?
This past August, yeah. Just about a month.
Do you want to ride it just to get around, like?
I'm not going to do it today because I have a dress on.
Yeah, that'd be a good move.
Yeah.
Like next week, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
Okay. Ride the bike.
I also, like, Ms. Hallahan never minded when I did that, but I haven't actually checked in with Ms. Rojas to see if that's something that she doesn't mind.
I feel like she would.
I feel like she get her own bike.
I think she'd be down.
As long as you said.
You should carry her around in like the bike.
Put her in the basket.
Oh no, like like the what's the thing like the parents have and like the kids sit in the back.
Oh yeah, the
That's a child seat.
Yes, that's what she said.
Or maybe I could get Miss Haglish to ride on the back. I got a little rack on the back.
Yeah,
Miss Rojas.
Oh, that's perfect.
Strong hold.
Yeah.
That's already.
I don't have gears on that bike. It's just a 1-speed. It's just a beach cruiser, so it's not fancy.
Cruising around the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't go too fast though.
No.
Ching, ching.
no,
Yeah, you don't want to crash.
no. Okay. All right, let's define some new learning objectives. Okay?
2.6.
You guys have already dealt with both consumer and producer surplus, and you didn't even know it. Okay? So we're going to define these terms for you. We're going to look at calculating consumer and producer surplus. And then we're going to get to market equilibrium, aka the clearing price or the market price. And so then you will have an explanation to why does the price change? Where did that price change come from anyway, right? We will not finish this module, but Smarty Pants Ms. Gramana did include continuing these 2 modules into Monday because I knew that I'd fall behind.
Smarty pants.
I know. I've just been to this rodeo before. Okay. All right. You guys are familiar with having the experience of, I was prepared to pay X for this thing, this pair of tickets to a concert, let's say, but I got it for this, right? And I was so psyched because I didn't have to pay what I was prepared to pay. I'm saving myself, I don't know, $25, right? That's consumer surplus. When you had a higher reservation price than what you actually paid. Okay? And earlier this week, when we did our simulation, that price, if you were a buyer on your green card, that was the highest you were willing to pay. That was your reservation price. When you got it for less, that was your consumer surplus. Okay? So they're taking you through an example here. On college campuses, when you go to the bookstore and you have to order books, you can buy used ones that cost less, and you also have the opportunity to sell ones that you've used from your class, assuming that they're not all beat up. Although I used to sell books all the time when I was in college that have notes in them and highlighted. I don't know who bought those things. Okay. So when we look at consumer and producer surplus, we can quantify how much benefit buyers and sellers get from these transactions, right? Because remember, we said efficiency is when we are maximizing sort of how many consumers and sellers can be better off without making anybody worse off, okay? Okay, so we're gonna look at how to measure these benefits. And here, this example is the demand curve for used textbooks. And it gives us the example of 5 different students, Allie, Basil, Sierra, Darius, and Emma. And these are sort of their willingness to pay. Allie, aka Moneybags, is willing to pay $118 for her economics textbook. Emma, not so much. She doesn't even want to take this course, but it's a requirement for her major, and she's just like, ugh, gosh, I'm gonna take this dumb course, okay? But here it kind of lays out all of their reservation prices, their top price they'd be willing to pay, okay? And by the way, their reservation price has to do with their willingness to pay, but also their ability to pay. Some people would be willing to pay more, but they don't have that kind of cash. So their ability to pay is also, so both of those things play a role. The book doesn't really call that out, but that's true. Okay. All right, so individual consumer surplus is the difference between the buyer's willingness to pay a particular price and what they actually paid, right? And that's what I was just talking about before. It's just that savings that you have. You were willing to pay this, but you paid $25 less. $25 is your consumer surplus. But it isn't exactly money in the bank. In the same way we're going to talk about producer surplus, okay? When we get to total consumer surplus, It's the sum of all buyers' individual consumer surpluses in the market. Okay. So let's say that the price is $60. Okay. If we were going to be looking at this market, and we'll just say that this is a school that only has 5 students, we could add up all the consumer surpluses for these 3 students who will actually purchase it. By the way, Darius and Emma will not purchase it because the price is above their reservation price. They value having that money in their pocket more than they do having that textbook. Okay? So they, in case you're like, oh, they're worse off, they're not worse off. They've made a decision. They value having the money more than they do the textbook. And maybe they're going to do something different. They're going to share one with their dorm mate, okay, or their roommate, something like that, okay? But then you could add that all up, and you can find the total area of the market consumer surplus, okay? And as I said, both Darius and Emma just aren't going to buy it. They get no consumer surplus, okay? So the total is the shaded area. That's it. If we were looking at the demand curve in a market of laptops, okay, and let's say the price is $1,500, which if you're buying a really high quality laptop, that's about the price. All of this area represents consumer surplus because below that quantity of 1 million, all these folks here would have been willing to pay a price higher than $1,500, okay? And then anybody who's here below that, they're like, you know, I don't need a laptop that's like that. I'll get an iPad, or I don't know, whatever they're gonna do. I'll use my cell phone, etc. Okay? Okay. So total consumer surplus is that area underneath that, or in that triangle, but above the price line, importantly, okay? You guys are going to be calculating consumer and producer surplus in the future. So make sure you are familiar with the area of a triangle formula because you will have to do that math a lot, frankly, in microeconomics, okay? So make sure 1/2 base times height. I don't think I need to belabor that point. Everyone learns that in grade school geometry, okay? So we can calculate that. We can say the consumer surplus is $1.75 billion. Okay, so this is the total net gain in a way, right? People would be willing to pay a lot more, but they are paying less, and so this is the net gain to our economy for those purchases. Okay, if the price fell to $40, right, then we would have additional consumer surplus. We would have to then take the area of these rectangles and add it because now Darius would also buy one of these books, okay? All right, so consumer surplus can increase and decrease given some price change is basically the point of that slide, okay? And then that part represents the increase. That is another skill you will have to demonstrate. Show me the increase after some price change. Show me or calculate for me the increase in consumer surplus, okay? All right. Yeah, we still have time, okay. The seller's cost is the lowest price at which they are willing to sell a good. And this sounds weird. Like, how can a business afford to sell things at cost? Well, they want to earn profits. We're going to get into the difference between accounting and economic profits in the future. But for now, we'll just say that at a minimum, a firm needs to break even, right? So if it costs them $20 to produce a good or a service, they need to sell it at a minimum of that cost. And you guys saw that in the simulation from Monday, right? If you were on the seller side of the room, the number that you were given was their cost, okay? So anything they earn on top of what it costs them to produce is their producer surplus, aka profits. Okay, profits. Now, if you're selling something you already purchased, like a used thing, it still bears an opportunity cost of selling the book. Okay, so we're going to assume that there are costs in addition to accounting costs, like for firms and what it costs them to produce a thing. There's also an opportunity cost. So whenever we're talking about costs in this class, you should assume that we're talking about accounting, so explicit costs as well as opportunity costs, which are implicit. Okay. All right, and I'm not going to go over all this stuff a lot, other than to say that if total producer surplus is when you take all the sellers, add up their individual producer surplus, and there you go. Okay. Again, I'm not going to belabor this point, but this is what it looks like when we're talking about a market supply curve. And if that's the price for the sellers, it's below the price but above their supply curve. Okay, that's the area of the triangle. So we can quantify that, again, using the area of a triangle formula. That's $1 million, or $2 million, excuse me, 1/2 base time height, $2 million. Okay. How do you guys feel so far? Does it seem pretty natural, this whole consumer producer surplus thing? Okay. We're on Monday gonna hit equilibrium really hard about how kind of bringing together everything that we've learned so far about demand and everything that we've learned about supply, as well as producer and consumer surplus, we come up with the market price. And then once we talk about market price, you guys are going to do some exercises in which, let's say, some market conditions change. You're going to tell me what you think is going to happen to the new price given that change in market conditions, okay? So continue to work. We've got some workbook problems I've assigned you for next week. Take a look at those numbers. Have a great weekend, guys.